You're probably looking at some phony right-wing internet stuff.
Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. Welcome to Day 799. Kevin McCarthy suggested that lawmakers need to see all the facts before they consider any gun legislation following the shooting in Nashville, which left 7 people, including 3 children, dead. The Nashville shooting was the 130th mass shooting incident in the United States this year so far. Democrats planned to introduce a measure to boost federal research into the causes of gun violence, but it has little chance of passing the Republican-controlled House. Republican Congressman Tim Burchett, meanwhile, said that Congress is not going to fix the problem of school shootings and that he doesn't see a role for Congress in preventing future shootings and that Congress would simply mess things up. Instead, the 3-term congressman from Tennessee suggested that Americans should focus more on thoughts and prayers, saying, if you want to legislate evil, it's just not going to happen. We need a real revival in this country. Let's call on our Christian ministers and our people of faith. Meanwhile, North Carolina residents no longer need a permit to buy a handgun. The state's Republican-controlled legislature eliminated the long-standing permit system that required local sheriffs to perform character evaluations and criminal history checks for pistol applicants. Although the state's Democratic Governor Roy Cooper vetoed the measure, the legislature overrode Cooper's veto. The permit repeal takes effect immediately. Meanwhile, the Idaho Legislature will vote to establish a new crime dubbed abortion trafficking, which would limit minors' ability to travel for an abortion without parental consent, even in states where the procedure is legal. House Bill 242 defines abortion trafficking as an adult recruiting, harboring, or transporting the pregnant minor within this state without the parent's consent. The bill passed the Idaho House earlier this month, and less than a year ago, Idaho banned nearly all abortions in that state. Moving on, the Senate voted to formally repeal the war authorizations that justified the 1991 Gulf War and the 2003 Iraq War. The action is largely symbolic since U.S. combat operations against Iraq ended more than a decade ago and would have no effect on any ongoing military operations. Nearly 5,000 Americans lost their lives in Iraq and more than 31,000 U.S. troops were wounded, while Iraqi deaths are estimated to be in the hundreds of thousands to millions. And finally, the Manhattan grand jury investigating Trump's alleged hush money payment to Stormy Daniels is not expected to hear evidence in the case until late April. The break is due in part to a pre-scheduled 2 weeks off that begins on April 10th. The hiatus comes about 10 days after Trump publicly predicted that he would be arrested. Trump released the following statement, "I have gained such respect for this grand jury, 7, perhaps even the grand jury system as a whole." And in the polls, Quinnipiac says 57% of Americans believe Trump should be disqualified from running for president if he is criminally charged in any of the multiple state and federal investigations. 38% said he should be allowed to run again if he's criminally charged. The Associated Press says 60% of Americans say the government spends too much money, while 22% say spending levels are about right, and 16% say the government spends too little. At the same time, roughly 60% of Americans also say the government spends too little on education, infrastructure, Social Security, and Medicare. And NPR says 31% of Americans say the economy is the most important issue facing the country, the top issue for respondents in the survey, followed by preserving democracy at 20%. No other issue, including healthcare, immigration, climate change, and education, broke double digits. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditis.